we were sort of blown away as well by the kind of impact that that had ongoing because of obviously you multiply those kind of savings across a caseload of 50, which might turn around what every 6 months to a year. You're looking at about 35,000 pounds, £70,000 savings, continuously over a caseload over a year. It's for such small changes, it's huge.
Welcome to Transforming Legal Services, a solutions-focused approach to cultural change. I'm Paul Z. Jackson.
Oh, I'm Janine Wardman.
And I'm Michael Graham.
And today you can see, I hope, on the screen, the outline and agenda. In essence, it means we're going to be sharing the way that we work together in a local authority in the UK with Michael, who was our client, in a solution-focused fashion over a number of years, and what we've learned and discovered and enjoyed along the way from doing that.
And this is, in essence, a change project, transformational change. So we have a question for you. And well, is when you think, what words do you associate with change? Mike, what words do you associate with change?
Making a difference.
Oh, very nice. Thank you. Thanks, Mike. So we have the longer sentence and making a difference. So the invitation, everybody, is to put in the chat a word or a phrase that you associate with change. Painful. Let's get that out there. Change is painful. What else? A new narrative. Thanks, Stephen. Could be exciting. Slow, potentially. Opportunities and unsure. Thanks, Mike. Another word in there. A risk or an opportunity. So we see it from both perspectives. They're scary. Pretending to change and actively not changing. Thanks, Wolfgang, for that optimistic fear. Fear, it can be uncomfortable, absolutely. And we're getting people echoing some of these. Aspirational sometimes. There is an element of politics. And relief at perhaps moments throughout that change process. Yeah. So we see fog. So
that's more of a weather forecast.
I know. It did actually make me think about the weather because it's been raining here a lot. But we can see from this, there are many associated words, some hopeful, others less so. Different types of emotions. Perhaps there is a certain inevitability towards change. So people associate all sorts of things with change. And when we think of change, what we think of is the word conversation. If you think about it, how many conversations do you have a day? And as we say here, that a conversation is a fundamental unit of change. It's small, it's accessible, we all know how to do it. And if you change the conversation, then there's every chance you'll change everything that surrounds it. And this project that we're going to share with you today started with a conversation with Reading and with Wendy. And in 2018, we won a contract.
2008.
In fact, 2008. Thank you very much. We won a contract to embed solutions focus throughout the Department of Education and Social Services at Reading Borough Council. And that's a municipality in the southwest of England. They've got approximately 2,000 staff supporting around 180,000 constituents. And they wanted to increase the well-being for staff and increase efficiency. The budget was tight and they wanted everybody trained. So we trained up a number of champions and they spread the word through implementing solutions-focused related projects, of which we'll tell you more about later. They were so successful that it went right through the council, and one of our champions that you'll see here, Wendy, who is a program and performance manager, asked us to run a program for community champions too, which we did. And this was just wonderful because not only were we working with the council, but we got to work in the community and implement projects that improve the community. It could be traffic safety or change within the community. So that was it. We worked with Reading for 3 years and significant changes were made. And then 10 years later, we got a phone call from Wendy. And Wendy was then now working in operations for the joint legal team services, 120 lawyers supporting staff, working with internal corporate clients, and also providing legal services for children and adult social care and education across 6 local authorities. So a large team with a big scope. And Wendy said to us, she said, help, we've got a big restructure. There's lots of unhappy people. We really need SF. Help us build our team and develop our leaders. We, of course, said, yes, we'd be happy to help you. So that's what we did. And we're going to just share a little bit about what we did, what happened, the outcomes, and how we got people having these conversations. And over to Mike first to tell us what his hopes and expectations were from the programme.
Well, I think my initial hopes and expectations from the team days that we had were looking at a fairly traditional kind of annual planning process where we were talking about trying to sort of bring the team together and coalesce around a business plan, a kind of traditional process which might be familiar to a lot of you in your own professional backgrounds. And I think I'd got an expectation in my mind that we would be doing things with, looking ahead, setting ourselves targets and developing work streams and et cetera, and what we got from Paul and Ginny was completely different. We got a completely different approach. We got a completely different way of looking at it. The thing that we were trying, the outcomes which we were trying to achieve, and we had an awful lot of individual conversations with each other, and there was an awful lot in there about how we were, what we were already doing, and rather than focusing on what we wasn't wanted, we were focusing on things which we did want, and I know Paul and Ginny are going to come on and tell you about this. So my initial hopes were sort of slightly turned on their heads, really, because after that first day, it was such a different approach that I was expecting, but also so refreshing. Also, what was really refreshing was that we'd sort of put these days either side of Christmas, and we sort of thought the first day would be sort of planning and a bit of blue sky thinking, and the second day would be really all about nailing everybody down into sort of, all these tight work streams and project plans, et cetera. But people were really so enthusiastic after the first day that when it came to the second day, they were really keen to come back because they wanted to carry on with the kind of conversations which we've been having, and they could see the value for us. So when we got to the second team day, everybody was ready to sort of make their own commitments and take things away, which was quite unusual for that kind of team day. Sometimes people come to those things, under a duress or a duty and feel reluctant to commit too much to what they're going to do. But there was complete buy-in and enthusiasm for the things which people wanted to change, how they could see the change, and most importantly, we'd made it approachable in a way which people could take it forward for themselves and see how their place in the team was going to be able to contribute, which was the really valuable part of it. And from there, when we had the initial 2 team days, which sort of expanded our horizons about what we could do as a group and how we could work together in a really fundamentally different way from what we might traditionally approach. It was then that when people were coming back to say we need some more solutions focus, we really liked what happened on the team days. I thought there's something there that if I talk to Paul and Janine, we can develop a program where we can roll this out and sustain it. And that's what happened on the development of the leadership program.
And as you can see, and Mike's alluded to, there were a number of events. So we started with 2 team days, and then we had the leadership programs and alumni. So over a number of years, a number of different programs. And the really nice thing is that as we keep developing people, they're supporting and developing others as well. And we'll just share the big picture of the leadership program with you. So over the 4 months, there are 5 days, and our program always kicks off with a 2-day workshop in the lovely environment of Reading Town Hall. And we have a 2-day gathering where people learn about solutions-focused coaching and the tools. They then go away, and we haven't come back, usually approximately a month apart. And the days there, the workshops 2 and 3, are about applying solutions focus to different aspects. So SSIs, which we will tell you more about in a moment, performance conversations and resilience, so that people are using SF in all of their conversations. In between the sessions, we really want people to be using solutions focus, having as many conversations as possible and transferring this into the workplace. They're actively encouraged to do that and know that they'll be reporting back. They have a coaching buddy from the group that they practice with. They're coached by one of us, and they have to move on their SF projects. These are projects that are using SF in an applied way in the workplace with specific measures. On the 5th day, people come back and they present back their projects, the results, what they've done, and their next steps. So this is our comprehensive leadership program.
So you can tell from that it's a very practical, pragmatic program, which is what people who are working day to day under a lot of pressure, with a lot of demands, need. And we thought about what solution focus could be to them. And we have 3 levels at which they could meet solution focus. And they might meet it at one of these levels, or 2, or ideally all 3, depending how engaged they got. So we have one level that I'm sure everyone here is familiar with, which is taking a solution-focused approach or a solution-focused stance. And that encompasses all of the conversations, the way you think about things, the presuppositions that you have, client as expert, people being encouraged to articulate what they want, focus on resources, and so forth. So the approach or stance as a whole. Then we presented solution-focused tools. These are also items you'll be familiar with, like scaling, or a future perfect conversation, or miracle question conversation. The idea of small steps that you could take. And these can be put together to form a coaching model or a feedback model or some other structure that people can use. We taught them the Oscar coaching model, and many people found that really useful to be able to take away and coach their teams or their direct reports using the Oscar solution-focused coaching process. But even that, for some, is going to be too much to bring in if you're changing things just a bit while you're working so hard with your teams. So we have this third idea, a third level of working with solution focus, which is a single sentence intervention, an SSI. And the idea of this is, what is one thing that you can say, either as a question or as a statement, that could turn around a meeting or a relationship, a pivot point where, for example, if there's a lot of problem talk going on, you could introduce a solution-focused statement or ask a solution-focused question. And many of the participants found this an extremely useful and accessible way in to starting to bring solution focus into their work. I say their work, but it's also their life and work. They'd often go and test it out on the easiest of all possible audiences, their families and come back the next day and say, oh, this made a real difference to a child doing homework, or a husband taking the bins out, or a wife doing something that the husband was interested in. So single sentence interventions, and we'll give you one of the activities now that we used on the course with the participants and see how you fare. They had legal expertise and didn't necessarily know much about SF. You, on the other hand, possibly know more about SF and not so much about legal expertise. And there's a legal element to the question. So this is the situation, and it was based on finding realistic situations from the reports of people who attended the conversations and the meetings, and from Michael telling us what people were using and needing to work on. A member of your team, you're the manager, a member of your team is very reluctant to advocate in court. And you need them to step up, because having our team advocate in court is beneficial for all sorts of reasons, financial, developmental, smooth running of the legal organisation. What would be your single sentence intervention if you were using one of the solution focused tools? So as I say, it might be a future perfect or miracle type question, could be a scaling question, could be checking in with the platform. It might be a reminder of know-how or resources or counters, or it could be a small step type of question or comment that you would make. The invitation now is to put into the chat, when you're ready, what you might say if you were in a conversation in which you're a manager and a member of your team is reluctant to advocate in court.
And advocate in court is for them to actually speak up and present a case. Is that right, Mike?
Yep.
My advocacy, right?
That's, you got your advocacy right, yeah.
So really fundamental for Mike's team particularly.
While you're thinking about that, Michael's comment, yes, we're finding it really useful as a way in to taking an SF stance. It's because it's so low risk, unobtrusive, and yet can make, as we've said, a fundamental difference if you shift a conversation in a certain direction.
You could write them in the chat, and also do speak to us if you've got some thoughts or ideas as to what you might say. Someone says, I'm very reluctant to advocate. And it was usually met by something like, I'm a bit scared too. It's hard work.
I just want to ask, are those lawyers coming to their coach to say that? Or is it just having a general conversation in a room or something?
Yeah, what you'd have, Beverly, is you'd have a manager who's managing a team. And Mike, you can speak to this, and
yeah,
that they're saying, that their manager's saying it would be great if you advocated in court.
To answer Beverly's question about where this conversation was positioned.
Oh, position could well be in a one-to-one. Yeah, it could well be in a one-to-one.
Yeah. We were teaching people to coach, and that managers were encouraged to take a more coaching approach. So they could have been having a semi-formal or formal coaching conversation with someone, and also to use it every day in a team meeting where they weren't doing a full-on use of all the tools as they might be in a coaching session. So it could be either.
Yeah, I mean, particularly that might have arisen in team meetings where we had a particular dynamic at one time where the people spiraled quite quickly into problem talk, and having the sort of skills to be able to sort of recognize that, and then call halt to that and flip into a more solutions focused conversation by deliberately saying something like, let's have a solutions focused conversation about this, and then you can then move on to, okay, well, let's take the topic of the outcome, which is lawyers going to court and helping their professional clients, and then you can move the conversation in the direction of what's wanted.
And we started with single sentence interventions, which was, well, if you don't have half an hour, maybe you can shift people with one sentence. And there are some super sentences coming in here, so thanks. Yeah, wow.
I like them.
Do you want to go through them, Janine?
Yeah, I shall do that with you. So, suppose you spoke up in court and did such a good job. What would X see you doing? Really nice, really nice. What would say, yeah, that's nice, Stephen. What would a person say about how you advocate in court? And perhaps maybe we might have invited them to say what was the best you'd done and get that perspective once we'd done that.
Mm.
Suppose you've been an excellent advocate for a client. Yes, what would you notice about yourself? So that invitation is suppose. Very nice, nicely positioned here on a day when you're feeling a little more confident about going to court.
That's a nice one.
Really nicely
Very
paced.
small step.
Yeah, and it works really well for a single sentence, doesn't it? Because it's gentle, it's an invitation. And then, can you think of a time where you've successfully influeed? So, really nice one from Mike there, which is great to see. A time where you've done something similar, helping someone step into their resources. And if you have to turn up as the best lawyer you can be, what would that advocacy look like? Yeah, what does good look like? You at your best.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. Yeah.
And Mike's given us the classic magic wand. So some fabulous single sentence interventions there.
What was interesting was that if you put one of those interventions in as your single sentence, nobody would know you were doing this thing called solutions focus.
Mm.
It would come across as perfectly natural and at most very slightly quirky or odd part of a conversation. So easy to integrate.
Yeah, I mean, we might have seen a scale in there as well, perhaps. What's the best you've done?
So many possibilities.
Yeah, it's interesting how people do focus their single sentences, and we noticed that people would stick to sometimes the tools they prefer. We're gonna now we ran the programs, and we talked about the fact that there were projects that people had to do. So we'll give you a little bit more information about the projects, and then we will share some of the tangible outcomes that people had. So people were given this upfront before they joined the program, so they knew they were going to be doing a project. And this had to be something that they were working on in the current moment. So a piece of work or a project or something they wanted to make progress on. We were very keen that we weren't adding extra work to people. Lawyers busy, they're logging their hours. So it was really important that it was something that was worthwhile. So it had to be something that an aspect of your work would benefit from applying solutions focus. What we wanted is something that was ongoing. It didn't have to be something that was done in 1 month or 2 months, but something that might perhaps go beyond the program. So it had longevity. It could be extended, it could grow and get others involved. And we were really keen that we wanted qualitative and quantitative results. So we wanted people to tell us what their stories of success were and also what measures they had. So maybe they'd save time, money, what influence this had had. So in effect, we were getting people to use SF with measures and also evaluating the program and the outputs at the same time. So they were our criteria. And when people came back to present, they were given this outline to present. So you can see that we were asking them to talk about what they set out to do, what they thought the success might be, what they actually did, what they noticed, what results they had. And then those measures were very, very important. And the question at the end or next to end that you'll see is the what else? And we'd say to people, so thanks for sharing your project. Where else have you been using SF? And it was almost magical. We'd hear someone go, well, I've done my project and I've changed my life, and we've landed this piece of work that we've been chasing forever. So the what else was really interesting to hear as well. And then we asked people what they're going to do next, because as we said, these are ongoing projects. And what we're going to do next is, Mike, you're going to share some of the projects, some of the outcomes that came from these projects.
Yes, absolutely. So I've looked back on some of the projects which people did, and at the beginning, I was really sort of interested to see what people were going to pick, because of course we didn't really give them any steer other than what Janine's just told you. They really had a quite a free rein, and consistently over the 4 cohorts, I was blown away by the projects which people came back with. They sort of tended to fall into 2 main categories. One was an approach where they tried to take something in terms of their work with their professional clients in the other departments of the council or in the other local authorities that we work with. And they'd done something sort of case related or related to their legal work, which was really, really interesting. And then the other sort of group of projects tended to be things which people were trying to achieve in our department, in our team, which they'd taken upon themselves as like an improvement kind of piece of work that they wanted to do. So they fell into those two broad categories. We've got two people to show you, and I can give you a bit of an introduction to both of those. But there were many others as well as those. And perhaps I'll talk at the end of the videos about some of the other examples, and I can also talk about some of the other kind of very pleasing and unexpected outcomes that we got from doing this project. Because I think that at the beginning we were thinking this project was going to be something to make sure that the people were practicing, and we had a way at the end of making sure that people finished the whole program by paying attention to, you know, the amount of resource that we were able to bring to it from Paul and Janine. So it was that kind of not just giving people the teaching, not just giving people the coaching, and then they don't think and don't apply it, but actually find a way to apply it. But the results in terms of what happened were way beyond just the kind of simple application, which we can explain. So I think the first video we're going to see is from Deborah. Deborah is one of our principal lawyers in one of the childcare teams, and she was on, I think, about the third cohort. And by that time, we'd opened up the cohort to other senior members of the team as well, which included on her team Dasha and Laura, and they all had an individual project to do. That was part and parcel of the rationale. But what they did is actually they grouped together and they created a team project. And the team project that they decided to pick was actually something really, really important for the department, and something which we had been trying to deliver with our shared service board, which was how can we get child protection proceedings finished in under 26 weeks. 26 weeks is a national indicator. Not all local authorities, most authorities in Britain aren't able to achieve that, but we were very, very focused on it. And in this project, Deborah actually worked with her whole team, expanding it out, not just to the two others who were on the programme with her, Dasha and Laura, but actually involving everybody from the trainee solicitors and the paralegals, and them all working together as a team and going out and working then with their social work clients to actually focus very closely on what small steps they could do in a number of different areas around legal proceedings and their relationships with clients and all different aspects of their work, so that they could get those cases in under 26 weeks. So, Paul, do you want to press that?
And to us solicitors, because of course we have to justify to the court if our cases aren't concluding in 26 weeks, what the reason for that is. The bigger context, though, and the most important context, is that within this process, there are the lives of children and the lives of families that are being fundamentally intervened in by the court and by professionals. And there are children's futures at stake. The decisions that the court makes within care proceedings obviously has a major impact in terms of where children might live in the future. Some children may end up being adopted. Some children may end up being in foster care away from their families. Some may return to their families. So the overriding important factor is the fact that you have children's lives in the balance. And of course, it's really important to them for those crucial decisions to be made about them within a timely manner. And that's why 26 weeks really is important. And obviously that underpins Parliament's requirement and the court's requirement that we should complete these cases within that period.
And that's such an important point. And I never expected at the beginning of this program that we were going to be able to, yes, if we got some benefits for ourselves, yes, if we got some benefits for the department, fantastic. If we got some benefits for the clients, but here, Deborah's team have been able to achieve something even far beyond that, which is actually affecting the life chances of the children, which the local authority is caring for. And the way that they approached that, they were so proud at the end of the results that they've been able to achieve, principally because they could relate it back to that fundamental purpose of why they were there, which was making sure that the children are not drifting and that they get a permanent solution as soon as possible, which is in their best interests overall.
Yeah, and Deborah announced it on the day of her project. She almost got the phone call on the day saying, and we've just hit 26 weeks.
Yeah, fantastic.
For the first time. So it's impressive. Mm-hmm.
And I think this comes out of the criteria that we offered for projects, that they could be individual or they could be a joint project by different people on the same cohort, and that they chose them for themselves of something that would make a significant difference, and that they thought solution focus, however they understood it up to that point, could make a difference with. So it was a well-picked and well-executed project that led to these significant results.
Mm. Jack's project slightly different, but still blew us away when we heard about it. Jack's such a humble and self-effacing young solicitor, and his presentation, which I won't give you the full story, but effectively the formal part of the preparation for the presentation sort of went askew because of his child got sick on holiday basically, and he wasn't able to complete what he wanted to complete in work. So he just talked to us, but when he talked to us at the end, what he had to say was absolutely fantastic and blew us all away with the impact. The impact compared to the simplicity of what he'd done and how he'd gone about it. And when we sort of gave feedback to Jack, we said, what you've attempted to do there is something which all lawyers would presume to be the holy grail, which is how can you get a perfect instruction out of a client so you don't waste any time. Anyway, let's hear what Jack's got to say about that and how he approached that.
So my name's Jack, and I am a housing and civil litigation lawyer. The name of my project was Case Ready Legal Referrals, and the aim of the project was to get to a point where officers were sending referrals for legal advice and legal action. That they were sending referrals that were case ready for me to look at and immediately take legal action with. I'm paid as a lawyer to do the legal work, and often we get referrals or requests for advice or requests to take action that don't include relevant information, or a lot of the non-legal work's not been undertaken. So that means that me as a lawyer, I'm spending a lot of time and a lot of the council's money doing non-legal work to get to a point where I should be able to do legal work. So to me, it meant that I can focus on what I'm trained to do and what I'm good at, the legal work. It meant that the time that I was spending doing the non-legal stuff, I could dedicate to legal work and other matters. For the council, it meant that at the point that the involvement of a lawyer was sought, things could progress quickly. So there was less delays, there was less money spent on a lawyer doing non-lawyer tasks and work. It meant that cases progressed quicker, we got into court quicker, and it also freed up the capacity of the officers referring to legal, because they didn't have to keep going backwards and forwards, providing me with information that they should have done in the first place. The first one took 9 hours, 9 hours worth of legal time with a cost of £1,125 to get from a position where the legal referrals received for me to do some actual legal work. Whereas the second one, very similar case, very similar circumstances, dropped down to just 3 hours with a cost of £387. So that's just one case example, but bearing in mind that I have up to 50 cases at any one time, the sort of scope and potential for savings across one lawyer's caseload is massive. I use the solutions-focused coaching tools and skills that we learn as a sort of a framework for working with client officers to get these legal referrals into a case-ready state. Not only did the case they did refer progress quicker, they had 2 or 3 other cases that they were intending to refer that they didn't in the end because they'd carried out all the pre-work that they should have done, and so the cases didn't actually need to come to legal in the first place. I think the most pleasing and probably surprising thing was that how much can be achieved with very small steps. The whole program was about how well, not the whole program, but a lot of it was about how one improvement can result in massive wider improvements, and that became very clear to me during my project. Agreeing one small step with somebody can result in big changes for individuals, and then it has wider scope for everything else.
And that's just fantastic. We were sort of blown away as well by the kind of impact that had ongoing, because obviously, as Jack said there, multiply those kind of savings across, a caseload of 50, which might turn around every 6 months to a year. You're looking about £35,000, £70,000 savings, continuously over a caseload over a year. It's for such small changes, it's huge. The other thing he didn't mention there on that bit of the call, but he told us about in the presentation, was he tried this out on a couple of the cases and talking to the clients at the very beginning. But the results were also not only that some of the cases came over and were more easily worked upon straight away and resulted in that financial saving, but he also told us that 2 cases didn't come over. He had talked to the client subsequently and found out that they were able to adjust things in the ways that they were working. So in actual fact, work was diverted away from legal entirely. Again, a wonderful saving again, but we can't even quantify that. But really, really fantastic outcome is that.
Yeah, and Julia, for your question about, and this happened in just over 4 months, actually it happened in less, because what happens is people come on a program and we say, you're going to deliver a project in 4 months. And then they come back a month later and we say, how's your project going? And they say, have you got a title? And they realize that they really are going to present, and people do. Everybody did get through. So I'd say a lot of the projects were about 8 weeks by the time people had got started and got them going. And we were available. We coached. So the coaching we gave people in between sessions was either on topics of their choice or their project. I can tell you that Jack didn't bring his project to coaching. He was coached on something else. Deborah, I actually did have a few chats with her about her project. So people use the coaching very differently. And we were available. But yeah, they had 3 hours of our time available to them. They used their buddies. At every workshop, we had them working on their projects. So so they kind of did tip. And that's why we said they were ongoing, because we were keen that they got as far as they could and that they kept it going within the council.
And they had the confidence to try it out. I think that's the most amazing thing about Jack's, particularly, was it when he reported back to us at the presentation, and we said, well, the question in the chat there is about it happened over 4 months. Well, Jack's happened in 2 conversations. He had 2 conversations with one particular client, and then got those results. And I think that's the thing with Deborah's as well. It was multiple conversations with multiple social workers over a period of time. But we're not talking about a continued and sustained amount of effort in order to be able to get those results. Because, yes, we sustained and continued the training to allow people to be confident to go off and have the conversations. But the conversations themselves, I don't think they took 4 months in terms of work, Janine, did they? In terms of the, start to finish. Most people were panicking for the first 2 months, as you've indicated, about what they were going to present at the end. So I think they were actually quite sort of short in terms of their how long they lasted, each individual one.
There was a range.
Yeah.
So some were not keen to take on a big project and were coaxed into a smaller project, and they decided that scope for themselves. Others took on something that was more challenging and put more effort into it and were rewarded commensurately. Yeah. So on the one hand, we had, here's a criteria for a project and we expect you to do one, and then there'll be a presentation of it. So we were taking it very seriously. And on the other hand, they could approach the whole thing with a single sentence intervention and test this in a minimal way. We're aware that for people to change when they're in work and under the pressures they're under, it takes something to get them started on that route. And they had this set of options with which they could start, along with the regular pulse of the training days, which was very short amount of actual contact time, plus the coaching.
We had one person who was in charge of debt or did debt collection, George. She coached all her team. She collected more debts. She put the figures in hundreds of thousands and attributed a good chunk of that to working with SF as well. And Samudu, what was his? He changed a heading.
That was a wonderful project as well. This was a team working with schools and children with special educational needs, and sometimes the parents got very distraught by the solutions which are being offered by the school, and it got litigious. And previously, the approach of the team had been to try and win all cases, but looking at solutions focus, Samuda turned that on its head and tried to work with the schools to think about being less confrontational, about not necessarily winning the case as being the outcome which they wanted, but the outcome which they wanted was to reconcile the relationship with the parents so that the child would be at the center of everyone's attention and getting the education that they needed. So they moved to the schools. He managed to move the schools' kind of attitude and approach, as well as shifting their own approach to be able to get sort of more negotiated solutions with the families and avoid litigation. And again, avoiding litigation involves avoiding costs, which is fantastic. And if you're looking at just in a pound sign kind of consequences, but also not destroying a relationship with the family that you're working with is untold benefits as well, isn't it?
I think it's okay to say that Samuda was under immense stress with these cases that he'd been struggling with over months and months, with very oppositional stance to the other parties. There's multi-party with the school, parents, the child, and the council. And switching to a solution-focused approach relieved all of that stress and tension. He got very quick, satisfactory settlement. They changed it in the letter headings.
Yeah, I appreciated that they'd sort of had made a thing on the letter headings about their success record, and they saw that was a contraindicator to what they were actually trying to achieve. What they were actually trying to achieve wasn't at winning at all costs or winning all cases. So they completely took that off. They changed their letterheads entirely to make sure that they were not seen as confrontational or not seen as aggressive in any way, which was really good.
So their original letter heading was, what did it say, Mike? It said, "We win."
Something, we win all our cases, or something like that. I was quite shocked, actually. I didn't know they were sending that out on the letterhead. I'm certainly pleased that they saw the need to remove that bit on what they put on the letterhead. Yeah.
Thanks for that. And we can see there's some questions in the chat as well. So opportunity now for questions and reflections.
So let's start answering them. Wolfgang, yes, that's absolutely understanding that if they could avoid going to court, that's a saving.
It is, and in that particular instance, he was working with housing officers, and I think the conversations that he would have adopted with the housing officers were about them having exhausted all their processes to be able to resolve the situation with the tenant, whether that would be about antisocial behaviour, or about rent payments, or about disrepair of the property, to be able to fix whatever the topic was at hand, and then avoid that coming into legal. So it was the have you been thorough in your preparation fed back into the work of the client team, which is about let's be thorough in our approach to dealing with the tenants in the first place, which sort of again extra benefits we weren't expecting.
Are we informed by appreciative inquiry and or signs of safety? We're familiar with them, but we take a pure SF approach. And you can see that in how we've structured the course and the questions we're asking and the suggestions we're making and the options we're giving to everyone who's on the course. We're applying solution focus to ourselves, to the project, and to everyone. Janine, research?
Is the research that informed your approach to which project, Gil?
Just in general. Nothing, not anyone particular, just in general. Any one of them.
No, they all had free reign on their projects that they did on the program. Obviously, behind the overall program design, we've got the tremendous knowledge and experience of Paul and Janine, and all the work that they've done over many years brought to bear on the program and designing that so it would work for what we wanted to do. But when it came down to that level of the individuals, the participants, choosing what they wanted to do, we gave them no kind of guidelines at all. And it's interesting, I started to talk at the beginning about sort of that traditional approach to project management and doing change. And actually, there's some other projects which people did in the team, which were sort of traditional change projects. And there were things like rolling out computer systems and revising induction processes and stuff like that. Stuff which I hadn't mandated for them to do, but which, because they felt the need that they had to do the project and then think about how they could practice their skills, we found out that we were having programs successfully implemented where we hadn't specifically put focus into that particular project or program, but nevertheless it got to the end just through the happy coincidence that the participants in the department were doing solutions focus. So it's really got something to offer us in terms of that additionality to what you would do on a normal kind of corporate project. If you need to roll out a new computer system, with about 3 or 4 projects where people talked about the rolling out of the computer system to me, Paul and Janine. We had to smile each time and pretend we'd heard it fresh. But in each case, it was people doing the same kind of work in different parts of the department, but to the same ends, which was delivering something which was a big objective for us. Yeah.
What about for the 3 of you as you were first conceptualizing and organizing, planning this project?
You mean the projects, the actual program itself, Gil?
Yeah, just stepping back at looking at the higher level and how you first approached this.
Yeah, this has been years in the making. So the SF project thing Aoki-san mentioned years ago, he used to talk about SF inside projects. And we have run various versions, this multi-part kind of program. And this is, I'd say this is the most refined and honed version so far. Paul, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, so it answers Julia's question as well, that our council project of years ago with Reading had a similar shape. So it's evolved over time. And it was a bit, we weren't secretly hoping and praying. We were confident because it had 4 different times that we'd meet people. We'd be coaching them and they'd be doing this project and they'd have access to single sentence interventions and various supporting materials. So every invitation was there for anyone to have a go. And those that had a go saw immediate results as well as these longer term results.
And the SSIs was the piece, because we've been thinking about this, running workshops and thinking, what's the smallest element that people can use. So that this program very much featured that as kind of the next evolution. And it also we were much more focused on the projects that we wanted them to be significant and how we supported people as well.
And to get people starting using SF as soon as possible, not waiting 2 months. And the SSIs help a lot with that. Cultural transformation, it was changing them and us thinking, I would think it's fair to say. And quality conversations were much more sought and happening than strict performance management or telling people what to do. And then the ripple effects that Mike's spoken about. So lots of good things going on.
Because obviously the thing that everyone wants from attending this course is a certificate. And so, thank God. But this is the group graduating. This is the day they did their presentations, and you can see Deborah in there and Jack and others. And I'd also like to say that one of the big things that made this work, because people, it did change the conversations they had day to day. It changed the conversations they had with judges in courts. But actually, Mike being at the centre of it, and he turned up for every single presentation. He opened every course. So that really marked that this was
hugely important.
Yeah. Next steps.
And then what did you do, Mike?
Left.
Mike resigned.
The new work, new opportunities beckoned. There we are. We've scoped a new kind of team development program on the back of that, because the work that particularly Deborah and her team did just sparked a thought, which was, of course, we've looked at this and given it to people as individuals, but the power of when they get together and do a team, a team project, and they support each other and they hold each other accountable by, carrying on the work and using the tools, it's got so much impact. So we've designed that program, and it's been left with Reading to pick up if they want to roll that through. It's been designed on a kind of 13-week basis, so that we could, you could reasonably think about an approach which allows you to identify a topic or an outcome you want to influence in one quarter, and then do some concentrated work on it. And by the end of the quarter, you've delivered something. And that, I think, appeals in quite a lot of organizational contexts. And so that's what we wanted to sort of leave as something which the council could pick up and work with and run with for future. Certainly the team have got all the skills, and it never died away. I have to tell you, it was never a kind of training event where we forgot about it or it was sat on the shelf. So often when people started to get tense and go into those problematic conversations, we just said, no, we're having a solutions focused conversation about this. Or someone would throw in questions like, well, what's the outcome you're trying to achieve here? Or what would good look like for you in this? Or when have you done something good before? So it was used all the time.
Thanks, Mike. And thank you, everybody. We call that the 90-day challenge that Mike's just described. And we hope to be able to report to you next year with further instances of this kind of project. And feel free to borrow whatever you'd like from what we've been doing for your own work.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.